What's up YouTube? Weston coming at you with a quick how-to. What we're going to do is show you guys how to set up a Texas rig in under 60 seconds, and it's all going to start right now. So first of all, go ahead and feed your bullet weight onto your line. Give yourself a little room, come over here to your hook, and you're going to tie your knot of choice. And for me, that's the Palomar knot. So I go through one time, I then come back through, and then what's going to happen is I'm going to loop, swoop, and pull this baby and get the knot nice and tight. And then all I got to do is put my plastic on, and that's really the essential setup for the Texas rig. And then we're going to go into more detail after this and show you guys some ins and outs, some kind of pro tips. So I've got my knot tied just about, and then what's going to happen is I'm going to tie this worm on here. And look, you don't even have to be a professional, you can get this done in 60 seconds. We're going to go through just the tip of the worm right here on the hook, and you feed that up, you twist it around right here to get to the tip there, and then you're going to go ahead and feed your hook through the worm and sink it in there, and now it makes it weedless, and that's the Texas rig in under 60 seconds, folks. And let me show you why you might even want to use this to begin with. You're getting a weedless setup. Your hook is not exposed, so you're going to be able to cast into weeds, you're going to be able to cast into brush, trees, laydowns, and you'll be able to pull the worm through there and not get snagged up. But I'm going to show you guys a few more pointers on how to make this even more useful so you can catch a lot of fish in your local area. So first of all, the types of hooks. I want to go over that. The Ewg Style Hook is what you're going to want to use. That's this guy right here. Hopefully you guys can see that. We'll let that focus. The one to your right is the style that I prefer using because it dips down a little bit more right here. And so what's going to happen is when you get your worm set up on the tip there, it's not going to come off the hook because it's got more of a dip. And so that's the type of style that I prefer. And this is a 2-aught right here. With like different baits, it's all the same setup. So you just go ahead and take this one off the hook, for example, and let's say you want to use a craw style bait. There's no difference. You just grab the hook right there and just go through the tip of the hook right here into your bait. And so then what's going to happen is you'll actually exit the bait and you'll slide that all the way around. And now we're getting up here to the tip. What you have to do is essentially a 180 with the bait and hook. And now you've got it right there on the tip where it needs to be, and you want your hook to sit like this inside the bait. So what that's going to mean is you don't just hook it right here, you actually kind of got to push down a little bit to get the hook to go into the bait right where you want it and come out the opposite side. And then what's going to happen is you tighten that down, boom, and your hook is still exposed. So what you've got to do is almost pull away from the hook tip a little bit, and then boom, it slides right in there, and now it's weedless. You won't get caught on anything, but what's going to happen is when the fish comes and grabs it, is they're going to go like this right here, grab that bait, and boom, you set the hook, and you have got them. So that's the brilliance behind the Texas rig, and you're going to have that bullet style weight just acting as the nose or the head of whatever it is you're trying to imitate, and that keeps you down low. The Palomar knot that I use, I'm going to go over in a separate video, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. That's the knot I tie. I think the strength on it is fantastic, and you're not going to lose any fish. And also, when it comes to the line that I throw with my Texas rigs, at least where I'm located, I always use 30-pound braid. I find it to be the best, and I'll link that down below along with everything else I'm talking about here in today's video. When I'm using my bait caster style reels, 30-pound is the way to go because you go too heavy and then you don't have the same casting distance. But if you're going a lot lighter, you're on the risk of breaking off, and certain times you wouldn't with the 30 pounds. So I think that's great all around with your bait caster reels. And if you're going to be throwing a Texas rig on a spinning reel, I recommend 15-pound. You know, you might be using smaller style baits, going more finesse, and I recommend 15-pound braid whenever you're using that type of setup. And depending on where you're fishing, if the water's very clear, you might want to tie on a Fluorocarbon Leader. Let me get you guys the close-up. Just your fluorocarbon line, and you're going to want to go ahead and tie maybe 6 feet, 4 feet onto the end of your main braided line using a leader knot that a lot of people will talk about in their videos, and I'll come out with one shortly as well. And that's going to go ahead and make it to where the line is invisible to the fish. But for us here in Texas, it's very murky and it's not too difficult. I could just throw the braid straight up, and I did for the longest time until recently. You might be able to see this, but I've Sharpied just the end of the line black, and it's yellow braid. So you might be able to see that transition right there. And so what that does is it just makes it in this murky water less visible to the fish, although I think if they're hungry, you know what I mean? So that brings us now to the weights. You got to get the bullet style weights. I'm going to let that focus. And I've got a couple different sizes. These little guys are about 3/16, and it kind of depends on maybe what style bait you're throwing. You know, if you're using a a thin worm like this guy right here, you might want to use a thinner weight like the 3/16. And if you're using a big boy, maybe like that 10-inch worm right there with the ribbon tail, you might actually go with the 1/4 ounce. And I almost missed something. I think this gives you the biggest advantage when you use your Texas rig, and that is your bobber stops. So let me get the camera to focus on that really quickly. It's just these little guys that end up sitting on your line and keeping the weight pegged down to your bait, because with a traditional Texas rig, your weight is going to move freely. To actually peg the weight down whenever you're talking about fishing through heavy cover or just a whole lot of weeds. So now I'm going to show you guys how to use the bobber stops and how to add them. You might be able to see this. They come threaded on these little wires, and you actually get your line to go through that circle at the end there. Just pull that off. You pull that off there, and now it's on your line. Boom. And so what you do is you slide that up now, just to get it out of the way. You just slide this on up your line, and then you go ahead and you add your bullet weight. Let's go ahead and tie this again. Tighten this down. Your Palomar knot, you can go ahead and yank both ends right there. And then what you want to do is just snip off that tag end, of course. Now you've got your hook on there good, and you have your weight and your bobber stop up here, so all you got to do is apply your plastic. The hook in there, boom. Now what you do is the weight is right there, but you bring that bobber stop down now. Now your weight stays pegged to the front of your plastic. That's the ideal Texas rig, folks. And I hope you guys go out there and catch a bunch of fish utilizing this video. And if you do, go ahead and comment down below. Maybe it's been able to help you catch a fish or two in an area you wouldn't have otherwise fished. Or you just want to know how to do the Texas rig and set this sucker up anyways because you've been hearing all this hype about it, and the hype is real, trust me. So go out there, fish this thing, and let me know what you catch.